I'm Jake, 27, and if there's one thing I've learned about family, it's that they can hurt you worse than anyone else ever could. Strangers might judge, coworkers might gossip, but when the people who are supposed to love you the most decide you're nothing but a joke, that pain cuts deep. I never really fit into my family. My parents weren't outright cruel, but they always made it clear that my older sister, Hannah, was the golden child. She was the perfect one, straight-A student, track star, went to an Ivy League school, got engaged to some finance bro with a trust fund. Meanwhile, I was, well, the disappointment. I wasn't great at school, I didn't have a fancy degree, and I took a different path. I always wanted to work with my hands, so I started my own woodworking business. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work, and I was proud of it. But to my family, it was just another excuse to look down on me. My mom had this habit of introducing me to her friends with little jabs disguised as pleasantries. Oh, this is Jake. He's a carpenter, such a free spirit. Translation: he's a failure who couldn't hack it in a real job. I tried to ignore it. I tried to tell myself I didn't care. But over the years, the little digs and dismissals wore me down. And nothing, not one single moment, made it clearer than my sister's wedding. It was a huge event. Black tie, over-the-top venue, hundreds of guests. I wasn't even surprised when I got assigned to the random cousins and plus ones table at the back of the room. But when I got to my seat and saw my place card, my stomach dropped. Instead of my name, the card read, "The Failure." At first, I thought it was a mistake, a sick joke. But then I heard it, laughter. Not just a snicker, but full-on hysterical giggles from Hannah and her bridesmaids at the head table. "Oh my God, he actually sat there," one of them whispered. My mom, sitting nearby, gave me a wide-eyed "oops, you caught us" kind of look. "Oh, honey, don't be so sensitive. It's just a joke." A joke. A joke that my entire family was in on. I felt my face heat up, my stomach twisting in knots. The humiliation was unbearable. Every worst insecurity I'd ever had, every whisper about how I wasn't good enough, every time they'd made me feel small, was written right there in bold letters. I could have gotten up and left. I could have swallowed my pride and let them win. But instead, I took a deep breath, stood up, and tapped my glass. The room went silent. Hundreds of people, all those guests, Hannah's perfect fiancé, my smug parents, turned to look at me. And I smiled. Because at that moment, I realized something. They thought they were humiliating me, but they had no idea what was coming next. I let the silence stretch. The kind of silence that makes people uncomfortable, shifting in their seats, waiting for the moment to pass. I could feel Hannah's eyes on me, wide and startled, her perfectly rehearsed wedding day going slightly off script. Good. I raised my glass, clearing my throat like I was about to make a toast. A few people awkwardly lifted their own glasses in response. "I'd like to make an announcement," I said, my voice steady despite the fire burning in my chest. "Something life-changing." I paused, letting the anticipation build. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw my dad frown slightly, my mom forcing a tight-lipped smile like she wanted to seem supportive but was already bracing herself for whatever embarrassment I was about to bring on the family. Hannah leaned forward, resting her chin on her manicured hand. "Oh, this should be good," she muttered under her breath. More snickers from her bridesmaids. I ignored her. "For years, I've been told I'm not good enough," I continued. "That my job isn't real, that I'm a disappointment, that I'll never measure up." And I let it get to me. The laughter in the room quieted. The smug looks faltered just a little. I saw some of the guests glance at each other, unsure if this was actually a toast or something else entirely. "But here's the thing," I went on. "While you were all busy laughing at me, I was building something." I exhaled, feeling the words settle into place. "And I just signed a contract with a major interior design firm. A huge contract. They saw my work, they loved it, and now I'll be making more in a month than some of you make in a year." That got their attention. Absolute silence. I let that hang in the air for a second before finishing. "So, if the failure isn't too much of a joke to you all, maybe next time you'll think twice before underestimating me." I clinked my glass against my untouched drink, took a sip, and sat back down. The tension was thick. People didn't know whether to clap, look away, or pretend they hadn't just witnessed my entire family get put on blast. My dad coughed into his napkin. My mom's smile was frozen in place, like she was trying to calculate the correct reaction. And Hannah? She looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. And then, from the other side of the room, applause. Not my family, of course, but a couple of guests. Some of my cousins. And, surprisingly, Hannah's fiancé. "Wow," he said, laughing a little. That's actually amazing, Jake. Congrats, man. That? That was the cherry on top. Because I saw it then, Hannah's face twisting just slightly, the way her nails dug into her champagne flute. She didn't like that her own fiancé was impressed with me. She didn't like that for the first time. I was getting attention that wasn't at my expense. Hannah recovered quickly, forcing a laugh as if she wasn't just humiliated in front of hundreds of people. She clinked her glass loudly to reclaim attention. Well, that's great, Jake, she said, her voice just a little too sweet. Really happy for you. But I could see the irritation behind her eyes. She wasn't used to being upstaged, especially not by me. Then she turned to her fiancé, Matt, smiling a little too hard. Isn't it so cute how excited he is? Matt frowned slightly, but before he could respond, my mom cut in with her own damage control. Well, of course, we're all very proud of Jake, she said, that practiced public voice slipping into place. Even if his choices were unconventional. There it was. The backhanded compliment. The subtle way she had to remind everyone that I hadn't taken the right path. I didn't bite. Instead, I shrugged and took another sip of my drink. Unconventional is one way to put it, I said. But it's funny. I don't remember anyone calling it unconventional when I offered to custom make your wedding arch, Hannah. Hannah froze, her fingers tightening around her glass. Because yeah, that beautiful, hand-carved wedding arch she'd posed under for all those picture-perfect photos? That was my work. Oh, that's right. One of my cousins piped up, catching on to the shift in energy. Jake made that, didn't he? Man, that thing was gorgeous. A few people murmured in agreement. Some guests who hadn't known started whispering, glancing between me and the arch like they were suddenly seeing it in a whole new light. Hannah's jaw twitched. Well, obviously, it looks good, she said through gritted teeth, but let's not act like it's the same as a real wedding gift. I let out a small laugh, shaking my head. A real gift? Right, because something custom-made, with my own two hands, isn't as valuable as some department store blender. She rolled her eyes. Oh, come on, Jake, don't be so dramatic. But people were listening now. And I could see it, the small shift in the room. The way the attention was sliding away from her and onto me. The way a few guests, people who had probably spent years laughing at me behind my back, suddenly weren't so sure about their stance anymore. I wasn't just the failure anymore. I was the guy who had made something real, something they were all admiring. And Hannah hated it. She was about to say something else, probably another dig to try and regain control, but before she could, Matt, her own fiancé, spoke up. You know, Hannah, he said, his tone thoughtful, I don't think I ever actually thanked Jake for that. That arch really was amazing. And honestly, he looked at me, grinning. I might need to talk to you about some custom furniture for our place. If you've got the time. Silence, absolute silence. Because in that moment, Hannah's perfect world cracked. Matt wasn't just acknowledging me, he was respecting me, showing genuine interest in my work. And worst of all, he was doing it in front of everyone. Her face went pale. My mom looked like she wanted to sink into the floor. And me? I just smiled. Because I knew I had just begun. Hannah's fingers curled so tightly around a bottle, I thought the glass might shatter. Her entire life, she had been the center of attention, the golden child, the one who did everything right. And now, on the most important day of her life, her own fiancé was admiring me. I could see the rage behind her forced smile, the way her shoulders tensed. She was calculating, scrambling for a way to regain control. Then she laughed. A sharp, artificial sound. Oh, Matt, she said, placing a delicate hand on his arm like she was reminding him who he was supposed to be impressed by. You're being so sweet. But let's be real. Jake's little projects are a hobby, not an actual career. A hobby. I had spent years building my business. I had poured my sweat into it, honed my craft, and built a name for myself. And she had just dismissed it like I was some guy whittling birdhouses in my garage. The anger rose in my chest, but I kept my voice calm. A hobby, huh? I said, tilting my head. Funny, because I don't remember your hobby funding a six-figure contract. That got murmurs. A ripple of conversation through the guests. Hannah's expression flickered just slightly. Oh, please, she scoffed. What contract? You're just saying things to impress people. I smiled. You really think I'd make something like that up? Before she could respond, I pulled out my phone, tapped the screen a few times, and turned it toward the room. There, in bold, undeniable letters, was the email from the interior design firm. A signed agreement. A number that made more than a few guests visibly widen their eyes. A low whistle came from one of my uncles. "Good job, kid," he muttered. "That's legit." Hannah's face twisted, but before she could throw out another weak insult, Matt, her own fiancé, spoke again. "That's incredible," he said, staring at the screen. Then he turned to me, shaking his head in genuine admiration. "I had no idea you were doing this well." And then he said something that would shatter Hannah's entire world. "You know, we were planning to hire someone for custom shelving and furniture in our new place. But honestly, I'd rather hire you." A gasp from somewhere in the room. Someone choked on their drink. Hannah went rigid. I could feel her unraveling next to me, the way her perfect, pristine image was cracking under the weight of something she couldn't control. And I let it happen. "Oh, I don't know, Matt," I said, feigning concern. "Are you sure? After all, it's just a hobby." His brows pulled together. "A hobby? This is real craftsmanship." I didn't even have to twist the knife. Matt had done it for me. And that's when Hannah snapped. She slammed her champagne flute down on the table so hard that the entire room flinched. "This is my wedding," she shrieked. "And you're all acting like he's the main event." Absolute. Stunned. Silence. Every guest turned to stare at her, their polite smiles frozen. Her voice had reached that high-pitched, frantic level of someone losing complete control. Even my mother looked horrified. "Hannah," she whispered sharply, trying to save face, but Hannah wasn't done. "This was supposed to be about me," she went on, her voice shaking with fury. "Not Jake. Not his stupid Littlewood projects. Me. My dress. My wedding. And you're all sitting here acting like he's so amazing just because he managed to con some company into paying him for." She froze. Because Matt had just stepped away from her. Not dramatically, not angrily, just enough. Enough to make it clear that he didn't like what he was seeing. Hannah's breath hitched, and suddenly she seemed to realize exactly how much she had just exposed herself. This wasn't a moment she could laugh off. She had shown everyone, her friends, her extended family, her fiancé, that she wasn't the poised, perfect bride. She was seething with jealousy. I leaned back in my chair, finally allowing myself to enjoy this moment. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't the failure. I wasn't the joke. She was. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. No one knew what to say. No one wanted to be the first to react. And then, breaking through the tension, Matt exhaled and said something that no one, not even I, expected. "Maybe we should talk." Not to me. To her. The color drained from Hannah's face. Because she knew. She knew that Matt had seen her for who she really was. And suddenly, this wedding wasn't just about me anymore. It was about her entire life falling apart in real time. And I just took another sip of my drink and watched it happen. Hannah's hands trembled as she turned to Matt, her eyes wide and desperate. What do you mean we should talk?" she stammered, trying to force a laugh, but it came out choked. "Matt, babe, this is just wedding stress. You know how crazy today has been." I didn't mean. Matt's face was unreadable, but his stance said everything. He wasn't standing beside her anymore. He was stepping back. "I think we should talk," he repeated, his voice quieter this time. In private. The room was dead silent. No one even pretended to sip their drinks or look away. This was the kind of disaster that people couldn't tear their eyes from. Hannah's carefully curated, flawless wedding was imploding. Her breath quickened, her eyes darting from guest to guest, searching for someone to save her. My mom? No. She was sitting there, stone-faced, probably realizing that this wasn't something she could smooth over with a forced smile. Her bridesmaids? They looked mortified, shrinking back like they didn't want to be associated with this mess. She turned to me, like I was supposed to help her. Me. The failure. The one she'd spent years belittling. "Jake," she pleaded, her voice thin, shaking. "Tell them I didn't mean it like that." "Tell Matt." I set my drink down and tilted my head. "Tell him what?" I asked. "That you didn't mean to humiliate me? That you didn't mean to throw a tantrum at your own wedding because someone else got 5 minutes of attention?" I let the words settle. And then, I shrugged. "Sorry, Hannah. I don't lie to people I respect." Her lips parted, her breath catching. And for the first time in my entire life, I saw it, defeat. She knew there was no getting out of this. Matt took a slow, deep breath, then turned to the stunned guests. "Excuse us for a moment," he said, his tone polite but clipped. "Hannah and I need to," he hesitated. Then, with a slight shake of his head, he corrected himself. "I need to think." And just like that, he stepped away. Hannah's face crumpled. Matt, wait." but he was already walking, and she had no choice but to follow. The moment the ballroom doors swung shut behind them, the tension snapped. A wave of whispers crashed over the room, people murmuring to each other, eyes darting toward me, toward the exit, toward the place where Hannah's perfect future had just cracked wide open. I just exhaled, stretching my arms lazily. Well, I mused, I think that went well. A few stunned beats of silence. And then, a laugh. Someone in the crowd actually laughed, and suddenly, the dam broke. Scattered chuckles. Low murmurs of wow, and did that really just happen? I thought this wedding would be boring. Even my mother, the woman who had spent years treating me like a failure, looked dazed. I met her gaze. She looked away first. And that? That was better than any applause. I didn't need their validation. Didn't need their approval. I had already won. And Hannah? Hannah had lost everything. And the best part? She had done it to herself. The murmurs swirled around me, a mixture of stunned whispers, hushed giggles, and the occasional clink of glass as people recovered from the spectacle they had just witnessed. Some guests were still frozen in their seats, processing the disaster that had just unfolded. Others had already leaned into the delicious chaos, whispering behind their hands, casting glances toward the doors where Hannah and Matt had disappeared. I just sat back, letting the moment sink in. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one people were laughing at. I was the one they were talking about. Aunt Linda, one of my mom's older sisters and the type of woman who loved drama as long as it didn't involve her, leaned toward me, eyes gleaming. "Jake, honey," she murmured, barely hiding her grin. "Did you know that was going to happen?" I smirked. "Nope," I said, "but I'm not complaining." She cackled, like, full-on threw her head back and laughed as if this were the best entertainment she'd had in years. I knew that girl was spoiled, but this? She shook her head, eyes flicking toward my mom, who was sitting there, stiff and silent, pretending she wasn't absorbing every second of this humiliation. Well, dear, I certainly hope she doesn't expect anyone to forget this by the time dessert comes out. She wasn't wrong, because whatever happened behind those ballroom doors, Hannah wasn't coming back the same, if she came back at all. At that moment, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, glancing at the screen. A message from an unknown number. "I need to talk to you. Now." I didn't even need to guess. "Hannah." A few seconds later, another message popped up. "Alone. Please." I exhaled, pushing back from the table. This was it. The moment she was either going to beg or lash out. And honestly, I had no clue which one it was going to be. I stood, my chair scraping against the floor, drawing the attention of a few guests. Aunt Linda raised a brow, but I just pocketed my phone. "Gonna step out for a second," I said casually. No one stopped me. If anything, a few of them looked downright eager to hear what I was about to walk into. I made my way to the exit, stepping through the heavy ballroom doors and into the dimly lit hallway. The moment the doors shut behind me, the muffled noise of the wedding faded, leaving just the soft hum of distant music and the occasional sound of staff moving in and out of the venue's back rooms. And then, standing there, arms wrapped tightly around herself, her perfect wedding dress wrinkled, her mascara slightly smudged from either stress or tears, was Hannah. The moment she saw me, her lips pressed into a thin line, her nostrils flaring. "Are you happy now?" she hissed. I leaned against the wall, crossing my arms. "Depends," I said. "Did Matt leave?" Her jaw tightened, and that was all the answer I needed. I let out a slow whistle. "Wow," I said. "That was fast." "You ruined my wedding," she spat. I laughed, shaking my head. "Oh no, you ruined your wedding. I just gave you a chance to prove to everyone exactly who you are." Her hands shook at her sides. "You." She sucked in a breath, visibly struggling to contain herself. "Do you have any idea how much pressure I've been under? The planning, the expectations, and yet, I cut in smoothly. It wasn't the pressure that made Matt walk away. It was you. That landed." Her mouth snapped shut, her throat bobbing as she swallowed hard. Then, with a shaky exhale, she changed tactics. "Jake," she whispered, her voice softer, desperate now. I messed up, okay? I shouldn't have treated you like that. But you have to understand, this was supposed to be the happiest day of my life." She blinked rapidly, forcing tears into her eyes. "I just wanted things to be perfect." I tilted my head. "Perfect for who? You? Or everyone else?" She blinked, caught off guard. Because deep down, she knew. Her whole life had been about image. about making sure people saw her as the best, the most accomplished, the most adored. And now? Now she had nothing but a broken engagement and an entire wedding's worth of people who had seen her unravel. You know, I said, pushing off the wall, my voice steady, measured. I used to want your approval. Thought maybe if I just worked hard enough, proved myself enough, you would finally respect me. Maybe even, God forbid, support me. I let out a quiet chuckle. But after tonight, I don't need it. Her breath hitched. Because for the first time in our lives, I wasn't looking at her like someone who mattered. She had lost her power over me. And that destroyed her more than anything. I took a step past her, heading back toward the ballroom. Jake, she whispered. I paused. What am I supposed to do now? I didn't answer right away. Just let the silence stretch. Let the weight of it settle onto her shoulders. Then, without turning back, I gave her the only response she deserved. Figure it out. And with that, I walked away. It's been a few weeks since the wedding, and honestly, I still don't know if I fully processed everything that happened. Hannah never came back to the reception. Neither did Matt. The guests awkwardly picked at their food, whispering among themselves, unsure if they should stay or leave. Eventually, the DJ tried to lighten the mood by playing music, but the dance floor stayed mostly empty. The whole thing fizzled out fast. And me? I stayed just long enough to grab dessert. Because hey, I wasn't about to let good cake go to waste. Now, about Hannah and Matt. From what I've gathered, Matt didn't officially call off the wedding right then and there, but he definitely told Hannah he needed space. And considering he was supposed to be leaving for their honeymoon with her the very next morning, that was a pretty big deal. I heard through the grapevine that he checked into a hotel that night, instead of going home with her. A few days later, he flew alone to what was supposed to be their honeymoon destination, probably just to clear his head. Hannah? She spiraled. I don't have all the details, but from what I hear, she's been trying to fix things with Matt, and it's not going well. Apparently, his family, who always liked her but never loved her, has been telling him that maybe this was a wake-up call. That maybe, just maybe, he dodged a bullet. My mom, by the way, has been silent about the whole thing. No phone call. No text. Not even a vague, passive-aggressive Facebook post about ungrateful children or how hard it is to raise kids these days. I think she knows that anything she says will just make her look worse. And me? I'm good. Better than I've ever been, actually. That whole night, the humiliation, the tension, the moment I realized I didn't need my family's approval, was like ripping off a Band-Aid I had been too scared to touch for years. I don't need them to see me as anything special. I don't need their respect. Because for the first time in my life, I respect myself. So yeah, maybe Hannah's wedding was a disaster. Maybe my family will never fully recover from the mess she made. But I don't regret a thing. Now, I'm curious. What do you guys think? Did I go too far? Should I have just laughed off the failure place card and let it go? Or did Hannah get exactly what she deserved? Let me know because honestly, I'm just enjoying the popcorn at this point.